All right. Let's make sure.
Here we go. This is take 3. We've got a couple people in the audience. Let's get a thumbs up from somebody. We've got our live chat back open. We have sound now, I believe. Sorry for the third time is a charm. Yes, sound is working. Thank you so much, SS.
Hey.
Okay, so here we go.
Going in.
Basically, the best opening take I've ever made was the first one. Of course, there was no sound. All jokes aside, my buddy Kol Peterson is down from Portland. He came down to raft the Klamath River. We spent an awesome day on the upper Klamath, the last run before they take the dams out. We're going to do some trail running as well. And I said, you know what, Cole, I'm not going to let you go back to Portland without talking ADUs. So he's in the studio today. I'm going to interview him. I'm going to ask him a few questions for maybe the first 10 minutes, and then we're going to take your questions live. We always have these ideas of what we want to share to add value, but really at the end of the day, the people that are here spending their Sunday night with us, that's who we want to help. So you're getting free consultation from 2 ADU experts. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kol Peterson, a friend of mine. Tell us who you are and how you got into this industry.
Hey, Derek. Thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting me to do this with you guys. Thank you for the few of you who are able to actually be here with us. Please put in the chat like where you're attending from and what your interest is in ADU, so we know who's out there. So yeah, my name is Cole. I do ADU related work like Derek across the country, policy, education, advocacy, consulting. Pretty similar to Derek. I do a lot of kind of more wonky stuff at this point with like helping to overhaul regulations in jurisdictions and states as needed, which is my passion. And that is kind of like taking what I learned in kind of doing market transformation work in Portland, which was kind of like in the US, kind of the godfather or the parental role or whatever you want to say in the ADU space. Portland has been seen as kind of like the pioneer for a lot of ADU stuff, which is cool. We, of course, look to Vancouver, British Columbia, which was the pioneer before us. And Vancouver, in fact, looks to Australia. And Australia didn't invent this. This stuff has actually been around since the beginning of mankind. We've always lived in multi-generational households, but it's really kind of manifested more strongly in the last decade or 13 years since Portland adopted really good codes and started to incentivize them. And I started to do a lot of like ADU like educational work with homeowners. And now it's kind of spread to other jurisdictions and states, namely California has become kind of the new leader in terms of sheer ADU numbers that are being permitted. In LA, it's kind of off the hook. And the Bay Area is kind of huge, and Seattle is huge. But you know, I think anybody in California who works in this space would kind of attribute some of the success to the work that was done in Portland that I was heavily involved with. And like Derek, I do a lot of like grassroots education with homeowners who want to build ADUs there. And that's kind of how I cut my chops, or whatever the expression is. But I started running tours there, talk for homeowners, teach classes for real estate professionals. A lot of like consulting for individuals who want to build them on their property. I built a couple ADUs myself. Started the tiny house hotel in Portland, so I know a little bit about tiny houses. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So Cole's being super honest. Basically what he said is he helped legislate and write the code for Oregon, which was the best in the nation at the time. And then California pretty much adopted it and made it a little bit better. The best in my opinion, the best ADU code in the country right now is in California. And I know we have a lot of people on this call from California here. So again, please put your questions in. I did keep the questions from the first try that we had no sound. So I will answer every question. Even if Cole has to leave, I'll stay here till midnight answering questions. So please put them in. Again, if you're live, we thank you. We're going to answer all your questions. And then also we're going to archive this to help other people. So no stupid questions. Somebody else somewhere around the country is thinking of you. Again, Cole, he did all this legislation for our state that's being adopted by other states. He's also done work for AARP, who is writing what we would call national model code that's coming to states near you. So I know right now, I think we have 13 states that have overarching state legislation. Can you just speak really quickly to states that you see in the future are going to adopt really good ADU or infill housing legislation, if you will?
Like legislation, the legislative process, the sausage making process is really fickle and unpredictable. So it's difficult to know who's going to adopt good ADU code. I can tell you who I wish would adopt good ADU code besides everybody, which is like a cheap answer. A good answer is like Colorado would be ripe, North Carolina would be ripe, New York would be ripe. But I don't know if they will. New Jersey would theoretically be ripe. But the states that have actually passed good code by my standards, which are quite high for deliberate reasons, are Oregon, California, Washington now, and Montana, and that's it. In the country, there's a few other jurisdictions that have what I would call good ADU code, like Austin, Texas, Durham, North Carolina, but really it's pretty few and far between the number of places that have good ADU code, and it's sad. And so a lot of the work that I'm working on is like helping jurisdictions realize their code sucks and they need to get it really good. The code needs to be really good to want to build an ADU. In other words, I wouldn't want to build an ADU in most of the country because the code's so bad. I wouldn't want to build an ADU if you have to pay huge residential impact fees, or if you have to build off-street parking requirements, or if you have to have owner occupancy requirements, or if you have to have 10-foot rear yard setbacks, or if you can only build attached ADUs, which is the case in all of Massachusetts. So there's a lot of kind of advocacy work that needs to do to help jurisdictions and states to get their heads out of their asses and realize that in order to make a code that's actually good enough for average people to want to build it, it needs to be like excellent. Mm-hmm. And there's very few places in the country that have excellent code aside from Oregon and California, Washington. And
yeah, I agree. And not to cut you off, and I'm not going to toot our own horns and say there needs to be more people like us, but there needs to be more people that like us are passionate about this and show up to public meeting, that talk to state representatives, that go to city council meetings, that show up to your capital and lobby, for lack of better words, on these needed infill housing strategies. So just because you're here, we see some people we've got Camas, Washington, we've got Tahoe, Truckee, we've got people, I see people in 3 or 4 states in the comments. Don't think that if you're not in one of those awesome states, those top 4 that Cole talked about, your state won't eventually have good code. And it comes from people like us, like you, that are willing to make a stand and go public and speak at public engagements and public meetings on the need for this. I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. Like I said, I really want to get into questions. I've got a couple more things for Cole. He is a huge ADU educator. He does the All About ADU certification for ADU specialists through Earth Advantage. It's the only certification in the country that will certify industry professionals in an ADU specialty designation. And he also hosts the ADU Academy, which he's having a couple times a year. Traditionally, it was in Portland. He just had one in San Diego, and there's one coming up in the Bay Area. Do you want to talk about the ADU Academy in maybe 3 minutes, who it's good for, when it is, and why people should come?
Yeah. ADU Academy is like the premier professional educational opportunity for practitioners who are hoping to incorporate ADUs more heavily into their business model. If they're in jurisdictions that have recently adopted ADUs and they're trying to kind of get up to speed on what ADUs mean for their industry, then the ADU Academy is for you. It's a really good networking opportunity. So there'll be people from across the country. It's going to be on October 20th in Berkeley, California. It's an 8-hour course, and you get exposed to like kind of really detailed information about design, build, lending, appraisal and real estate in terms of those facets, the things that make those individual fields specialized when it comes to ADUs. And I hire top-notch practitioners who have a lot of experience with ADUs to teach those curriculums. So I'm the director of the event. I don't teach at the event. I just kind of help direct the event and facilitate the conversations. There'll be roughly 100 people, maybe 150 people. It's going to be at the UC Berkeley campus, and there's going to be a host of other ADU related events, such as an ADU tour on Saturday, October 21st. There's going to be a policy talk on the Thursday, the 19th, and other events. So it's a really cool opportunity to both learn a lot, network in great abundance with other practitioners, and also just kind of get exposed to some of the best minds in the industry right now, because really a lot of the mind capital, both monetary and mental capital that's going into ADUs right now is in the Bay Area and in the LA. So we're bringing it to that region for a reason, because there's so much kind of concentration of thought and capital on ADUs right now in the Bay Area.
Cool.
So that's it.
That's awesome, Cole. And let me just ask you one more question before we jump to the audience here for Q&A. Where can people find more about you? Maybe flash your book. He wrote the book on accessory dwelling units, literally. I've got a signed copy right here, but tell people where they can follow you and find you and see what you're doing.
Buildinganadu.com is my website. This is my book. I'm not active on social media, but you can sign up on Building an ADU to be on my news, on my email list, and I'll send out announcements to you that way. But I have an online course and other stuff. But buildinganadu.com is kind of the best place to find me.
Nice. Okay, cool, guys. We're gonna go to the audience here, and we're just gonna take questions as long as they come in. So SS said sound is working. Thank you. Sound is good. That was another comment. Thank you. And we're just gonna switch off. I see one down here from Amin about corner lot in Portland. Cole is definitely taking that one, but we're gonna go in order here. So Gene Carpenter asks, here in Vancouver, Washington, we are in the process of planning permitting for an ADU in backyard. That's awesome. It's not really a question, but a couple things I would chime in and say is become an expert in your local zoning code, understand what you need to do if you're an owner builder, or hire somebody in your market that has experience building ADUs or planning ADUs. If you have any questions further, Gene, please drop them in. Somebody else is talking about building one in Vancouver. That's awesome. Why don't you, Sacramento, California, looking to start an owner build ADU, looking how to start. You want to chime in on that, and then
I want to push back on something you just said.
Yeah.
You said, I just like to daylight some of these little differences, because I really think this guy knows his stuff. But we do have some differences of opinion, and I think it would be interesting to air those differences.
Yeah, of course.
So you said, just off the cuff, you would recommend hiring somebody who has experience building ADUs. I don't think construction of ADUs is necessarily something that is a prerequisite. It doesn't hurt, obviously, but I do think it's important to hire a designer who's passionate about ADUs or is knowledgeable about ADUs. But as far as the construction, I oftentimes think as long as you find a builder who's experienced with constructing a house, they can build an ADU. The only difference is really the utility connections and the fact that you're going to be working on site with the homeowner, and that differentiates ADUs a little bit from doing spec development. But did you mean that explicitly, that you would actually look for a builder who has experience building ADUs?
Yeah.
And what if you're in a market that doesn't have such builders, because there aren't ADUs being built?
Yeah, that's a good question. So to clarify that, when I'm saying look for a builder, usually the small local builder is going to do plan, design, build for a homeowner. So that's one person. Or one small company. And more than anything, when I say look for somebody that's built an ADU, I mean look for somebody that has a relationship in that market, who knows the inspectors, who knows the planning director. So when the foundation inspection is going on and the inspector's on site and there's a piece of rebar that's missed, they have a relationship where they know how the system works. It may be a phone call, it may be an application on the phone, but the relationship is more important than any other single standalone piece in the plan, design, and build process, in my opinion. With my experience.
So it doesn't have to be somebody who's built an ADU. It's just somebody who has who's built. in
Yeah,
the
you need a
jurisdiction.
local builder. Yes,
Local builder.
you need a local builder who's gotten plans, and I could back it up and say who's gotten residential construction through planning, design, and build in that market.
And
So-
I agree with that. And to daylight another way that nuance of that subtle comment does play out is like you and I have talked about prefab ADUs, and there's a lot of like marketing of prefab ADUs. And prefab ADUs have a role, and they're becoming more popular. So I don't want to undermine them, but part of the kind of skepticism that I bring to the table, and I believe you'd bring to the table, is like these are people who don't necessarily have experience in your jurisdiction. So even if they do know how to build that structure, that doesn't mean that they know how to like get the foundation and the utilities permitted in your jurisdiction. And so like your advice is a little bit different than mine on this, but for people who are interested in prefab ADUs, your advice is really sound, which is like, do they have good reviews on their website? And I'll let you speak to that. But I would say, do they have any actual examples of permitted ADUs in your jurisdiction? And not to say if they haven't done that, you shouldn't work with them, but certainly if they don't have any permitted ADUs and references of people who've utilized their actual prefab ADU, I wouldn't use those companies. I'm very skeptical of that, but there are some prefab companies that are now like actually being quite successful. And so it's becoming a new thing that a lot of people are definitely interested in. So I just want to mention that, and you have some good advice on that front too.
Yeah, and I'll touch more on that as questions come in. But just to kind of put a bow on that whole piece, is you're thinking about building an ADU in Sacramento. How do you start? Well, you have to decide, are you going to be an owner builder or are you going to hire somebody to do it? The most important piece, if you're hiring subs or you're hiring a general contractor to do the whole thing, is to interview a few different people, hire who you think you can like, or who you trust, and somebody that's done what you're trying to do in the market you're trying to do it in, period. And that's one reason why some of these manufactured or prefabricated or offsite built companies can't do what they do at scale, is because it's so different. It doesn't matter if California lets you do a JADU and an ADU. Every city is going to have different policies. They're going to have different nuances. They're going to have different personalities. Yes, folks, there are personalities in this business. I don't know anybody that's built more ADUs or been involved in more ADUs than me, only because the town I grew up in allowed them legally in the 90s. And I couldn't go do what I do 2 towns over because I don't have the relationships. I don't know the people. It would take me years to build the things that I've built by doing it only in a couple markets. So that's all I would say, is it's a relationship business. And you might hear me say that a few times tonight. We've got a Tahoe Truckee Brokers here. It says real estate broker owner with my husband in Northern California. Beautiful area. I love skiing down there. I'm about 4 hours north of you guys. We'll be at Kol's ADU conference in Berkeley. Sick. Looking forward to ADUs making a dent in our workforce housing crisis. Ski towns. I mean, Tahoe. I saw Breckenridge. Aspen had the same problem where they were literally paying short-term rental hosts to not short-term rent their houses so they could put workforce from the resorts in them so they could actually get people on ski lifts.
Let's talk about Truckee for a minute. So Truckee is an example of a jurisdiction that has huge snow loads on the roof. And so that fundamentally changes like what kinds of structures you can permissibly build there. So you have to work with a builder who has experience, or an engineer at least who has experience in Truckee or that area.
Wait. You mean I couldn't just like get a boxable for 50 grand and drop it down on like Donner Pass?
No.
Okay.
No, because you need to have the kind of engineering that can show that you can support 15 feet of snow on your roof in Truckee. So that's a good example of where like this generic idea of like getting a prefab ADU probably doesn't work. Not every city is going to be like Truckee, but that's their costs are going to be higher in Truckee just for that reason alone. Not to mention the labor shortages that come along with being an expensive ski resort town.
Cool. Christopher is talking. He says, "Hi up the Kol. You need more good players on the regulatory side." So he's giving you an attaboy there. Chris from Charlotte, North Carolina, booked a call with Derek some time ago and converting my first ADU in 2 months. Yes.
Yeah.
Send me the picture email me your success story. I like to share those. I get a few of those a week, and nothing makes me feel better than seeing other people win. One thing Cole wanted to talk about before we started, I had like 4 goofy little questions here, and Cole said, "Hey, let's talk about how we make a living." I got a question. We were on the river the other day rafting, and there was one of the other people said, "Hey, how do you guys make money? It sounds like you're just giving away your strategy and sharing with other people and creating competition." And Cole brought that up today. He said, "Let's talk about how we make a living." So, Cole, do you want to kind of start? How are you able to come down here and just vacation for 3 or 4 days when
Yeah.
all your friends are at work?
So we live the ADU lifestyle, which means that we are living our dream, sharing this gospel not because we're making a lot of money teaching about ADUs, which is what we both do, but because we generate rental income from ADUs that we own, and so that is really like most of my income is really just the rental properties I own as a result of having built 2 ADUs. It's not as many as Derek, but like smartly built, well thought out ADUs have been the game changer for me, and enabled me to spend my time quitting my really good 9 to 5 job and doing the stuff that I actually love to do, that I'm good at, and putting my skills into kind of scaling up the ADU movement, because I believe in them so strongly. Because I just think that they're like a really good solution for a variety of different reasons. For me, it's like a climate change thing. For other people, it might be to solve the affordable housing crisis. For other people, it might be for building a better social fabric in their community. There's a lot of good reasons and motivations of why people want to build ADUs, but there wasn't really a lot of people like me and Derek out there, kind of helping to catalyze and get that information put into a way that was useful for other people. So that's what we do, but it's really not an income based thing. It's really just like that we have the freedom to do it because of the ADUs that we own.
Yeah, well put. And the only thing I would add to that is I know there's a lot of gurus out in the investment space, out in the education space, and not that there's anything wrong with those folks. And a lot of them have careers that are well deserved and well earned. But I don't feel like I can accurately teach a strategy or share a strategy unless I'm actually doing it. I mean, I still house hack to this day. Every house I build gets an ADU. We're underneath an ADU right now. Cole came down here and he's staying in an ADU that I just built. All of our primaries have ADUs on them. So the point I wanted to make is that we're not here to sell you anything. We're honestly here to share what's worked for us, and we're able to be here to share what worked because we actually took action. So sorry for the sidebar there. Chris is asking about the permit to tap fees for the ADU is the same as a standalone house, and this seems wrong to me. Is this the case everywhere? Do you want to start, and then I'll throw in my opinion?
Yeah. So it is wrong from a policy vantage. Like that would be called a regressive ordinance. That is to say, you're penalizing people for building a small house. The same could be said for like size-based ordinances that say you can only build 50% the size of your primary dwelling. To have a set fixed utility connection fee for water, sewer, electrical, for your ADU as it would be for a single family house is perversely disincentivizing the development of an ADU. And essentially like it's not even intentional, but it's unintentionally penalizing small housing, and which is essentially penalizing affordable housing. Again, it's accidental. I don't think this is a deliberate thing, but those fees should be scaled according to the size or the impact of the unit that you're building. So since you are building an ADU, you're necessarily building a unit that's going to be lived in by 1 or 2 people, most likely, very high chance of it. And therefore the impact fees associated with the development of that ADU should be scaled according to the impact that they're going to have. And to have a fixed fee across for permits or for impact fees or for utility connection fees is a regressive policy that disincentivizes affordable housing production.
This is why we're so valuable, I think, together, is because he always goes to like policy and education and what's the written word. And I'm always thinking, like, how do we get around this? Like, what's the gray area that we use? I know in our area, there's a percentage based system. So if you have a 2,000 square foot house and you're building a 500 square foot ADU, you'd only pay 25% of that fee. I would be looking at this as a cost. This is a cost that isn't worth doing the ADU. Cole opened up in our first video that had no sound, darn it, that there's a lot of codes like that and requirements that are pushing people out of an ADU. And it would be like, well, why would I build an ADU if I'm going to have to pay all these fees? I'm just going to build a detached living space and not put a kitchen in it. There's a lot of reasons why people are doing that. And the number one reason is because there's high costs and bad code. So that's a really good question, Christopher. Sorry you're dealing with that. I will tell you, as a past sitting planning commissioner and doing work in public office, if you come into a public meeting and you speak on a non-agenda or agenda item and you share that, you would be surprised at how one or two people showing up at a public meeting can actually change how things are done in your jurisdiction. So don't be afraid to show up at a planning commission or a city council meeting and say, hey, everybody here voted, unanimously to support this ADU ordinance, but did you guys know that because of A, B, C, and D, it's not a cost-effective housing unit? Can we please correct these or look at correcting these in our next code revision potentially? Or
What they're doing is they're incentivizing the production of large McMansion development and disincentivizing small, right-sized housing that meets the demographic demands of the population, which are 1 and 2 person households. And so there should ideally be a standard where they like waive or incentivize the production of ADUs through waiving impact fees or reducing them substantially, and that the utility connections, water, sewer, and electrical, are scaled down to like 50% of that of the primary house. It doesn't have to be like a super nuanced policy, but something like that would be what we want. Whether it's scaled down by square footage or scaled down to the number of bedrooms, or just scaling it down by, if it's an ADU, it's 50% of the size for a prime, or 50% of the cost of a primary house, are all reasonable measures that other cities have taken, like Portland.
Okay. I'm going to let you catch your breath real quick, and then we're going to go to Amin's question here about a corner lot in Portland and 1 or 2 ADUs. And I don't think there's a better person on planet Earth to answer that, because that's your market. I know you have a corner unit with an ADU. So why don't you take that one, please?
Sure. So you can build 2 ADUs in Portland, as you can in like all of Washington, all of California, and corner lots are the best lots on which to do this, along with alley lots, but probably corner lots are better. The rules stipulate that you can do 2 detached ADUs, or you can do 1 internal ADU and 1 detached ADU. It kind of is site dependent on what is going to make the most sense. If I was doing a consultation with you, what I would say is, realistically, you're not going to be able to afford to do 2 ADUs at the same time. So you should probably figure out which one to do first. And the one thing you might want to think about in that is, if you're going to be upsizing your utilities, such as your electrical service or your water service, you want to think preemptively about what size ultimately you want to upsize those to accommodate that second unit. And then you also might want to think about accessibility, because in Portland there's a visitability standard that it kicks in for detached ADUs that doesn't kick in for attached ADUs. So this is getting down into the weeds a little bit. I'd recommend actually just hiring me for a consultation if you're in the city of Portland to talk to you about this on your property. But fundamentally, I'd say go for 2 ADUs. Absolutely, it's the way to go. And you can do it, and you can do them in a variety of different ways, and corner lots are the best, so you probably will be able to do it. I'll stop there. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think you nailed that one. I try not to get excited in another person's patch of timber. I'm pretty well versed in Portland, but nobody, like I said, on planet Earth is better. So I'm going to take Gene Carpenter's double barrel here. This is like my favorite question. Everybody check this out. So it says, if space is available, do you always want to build to the maximum square footage allowed in your jurisdiction? This is my favorite question, because everybody calls me, not everybody, but most people call me and they say, Derek, in my jurisdiction, I can build 1,200 square feet. I want a 1,200 square footer. And what I always tell people is you can build the max size if it's in line with your goals. And very seldom I'll have a client say beach view in San Diego, where I do say, yes, go to the tilt. Let's go even bigger with some non-living space, what we would call non-gross habitable living area, and we can go even bigger than that 1200. But in most cases, most people that call me, their goal, one of their goals high on the list is yield. And the cost per square foot in general, in my opinion, based on 30 years of building, is going to be pretty much one for one, to an exception. I know Cole's got some data that he'll probably argue, but if somebody wants to build a 1-1 ADU that's 500 square feet and it's going to rent for $1,500 in the market, if they built a 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath ADU, is it going to rent for $3,000 in that market? Usually not. So I just turn it into a math problem based on their goals. So if your goal is to drive a yield, I would say no, you wouldn't want to build max square footage. If your goal is to live in the ADU and downsize and have room for your grandkids to come over and stay, it may be beneficial for you to build, but always start with the end goal in mind. And I think most people right away, when they hear that high number, that's just automatically what they think they're going to build, just because it's a max. Because we put a limit on something as human beings, like we want the limit. Like if I said, well, I'm going to give you good, better, or best of anything, what do you want? You want the best. So it's kind of like how we're programmed to think. It's going to be based on your goals, but usually no. My based on what I do, my number one unit is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath that's just over 500 square feet. I could build way bigger, and I never do. I've never built an ADU that's maxed out up to the max in my market. The only exception to that is if it's an over under and you're converting part of one existing floor, you don't have as much control. So that's how I would answer that, Gene. And then the typical dollar per square foot ADU construction that we're seeing recently, this is the early meteorological fall of 2023, and we're building detached, new standalone, hands-off builds. So this doesn't include site prep or permits, for about $225 a square foot. That's about the starting rate for a local contractor. That's not me. That's not sweat equity. That's if you were going to hire a local professional general contractor with a decade or more experience, you can't do anything detached for anything less than about $225 a square foot. Goes up really fast from there. Conversions are about half of that. That's been my experience recently. We've had some extreme price increases through supply chain issues, through the COVID-19 debacle. And then we've seen material, wood, panel products level back out, but labor is still really high. So I'd say that we're at a pretty good time to build. Lumber prices are down, but labor's high. And the caveat I'll leave you with, Gene, on that is if you're willing to get your hands dirty or you have some skills, you can greatly reduce that price. I just built 2 ADUs for just over $100 a square foot all in, but that's with tons of sweat equity. I work 16-hour days, dark to dark. I'm not saying that that's the norm, but that is possible as well. So I hope that helped. Okay, Cole, we got a question for you coming up. This is this is from our Portland. I think that's the right pronunciation there. You want to take this one? Understanding? Yeah. The basement
Also, my
ADU?
understanding is that if you build a basement ADU, then you're limited on building a detached ADU. So it would be better to build out a basement with an accessory kitchen and then other detached. So yeah, you can build a detached ADU and an attached ADU, or you can build an accessory. If you can build a basement habitable, can convert your basement to habitable space with an accessory kitchen, which is a code that Portland now allows. Provided you are not having a firewall separation between the basement and the upper unit, and no doors or walls separating it, you can build that accessory kitchen and you don't have to separate out the utilities. It's not an ADU. And then you can build your detached ADU, or you can build it as an ADU, a basement ADU. This is again where there's some subtleties here, where from a there's certain reasons why it might make sense to call it an ADU, and there's certain reasons why it might not make sense to call it an ADU, the basement unit that is. The detached ADU, yeah, for sure, go for it. So you're not limited on the detached ADU by by building the basement ADU. So.
Good question. I just want to give a shout out to our friend Ryan O'Connell, How to ADU. I know a lot of my followers are also followers of him, friends of him. Cole and him and I all kind of work together. Again, this is collaboration, not competition. If you go to my website, I'm not trying to sell you anything. In fact, I'm like, go to the resources tab and look at Cole's stuff and look at Ryan's stuff. So a little embarrassing moment right now. We tried twice with no sound, and Ryan, being the good guy that he was sending me advice on how to get sound. So thanks, Ryan, for not publicly making me look too much like a goofball. Good to see you on here, dude. If anybody doesn't follow How to ADU on YouTube, check out Ryan's stuff. He's the go-to person in California, and I do trust him. So check him out. Next question here. Let's see. What kind of properties would you look for to build on? Existing home with partial acreage, minimum ideal acreage, zoning codes, tips, etc. This is a good question. I'm going to start, Cole. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you have a house that you want an ADU on, you're very limited. You're limited with where you're at, the zoning that's there, and the topography you have, and the parking you have, pretty much, period. I always talk about where I'm going to build an ADU from an investor standpoint first. So important to me are three things: the location, the privacy, and the amenities. The location always being number one, because it's the only thing that time and money is not going to change. So I'm always looking for areas that are a good location. I've already identified their zoning code, that they have excellent zoning code. And I'm looking for flat lots that have good infrastructure. So 1970s or newer infrastructure on the house, preferably 1970, late 70s or newer. And I want it to have either alley access or corner access, preferably already with a curb cut. So the things that I'm looking for, it's not usually price. A lot of people look at what's the cheapest thing I can afford. I'm looking for, is a good ADU code, is it a good location, and then those few other things. The one that's most important outside of location, in my opinion, is going to be the infrastructure. Don't get fooled into getting a good deal on a property that you want to do the ADU strategy on, that you're going to have to upgrade the electrical panel, that you're going to upgrade the sewer line on, that you're going to have to cut a bunch of fill out of the bank and haul it off. So by buying a newer building, 70s or newer, you're going to get a good sewer line. I always recommend everybody pay for a sewer scope and a sonde before you buy a house. Never, ever, ever, ever close on a house. I don't care if it was built last week without spending a couple $100s to send a camera down the sewer. I like good infrastructure when I'm buying a house. Also has to have, like I said, good ADU code and be in a good location. You got anything to add?
Yeah. All right. So I would have this answer would be like customized for individuals.
Just give them the general.
There is no general. That's the point. Because let's say that SS is looking for a property that she wants to live in the ADU. Then it's a different question. It's like, okay, she wants a property with a good detached ADU potential. Then you need to have, you need to have a backyard. It needs to be, reasonable sized enough to build one. Fundamentally, I would go with like location, just like what's a good part of the city, because that's going to be the area where the real estate values are going to be more expensive. That is to say, the free dirt that you're getting, that you're going to be building your ADU on, is going to be worth more than in a bad location. So generally speaking, we see ADUs being built in high value locations as opposed to low value locations. That's because if you're in Detroit, you can buy the next property next door for $100,000. You're never going to build an ADU because you can buy the property next door. Whereas if you're in Oakland, California, next property over is $1.2 million. It's going to make a lot of sense to build an ADU to take advantage of that free dirt in your backyard. So boiling that down to more of a local situation, I would say, yeah, that free dirt is really important. Where that free dirt is located is really important. So good location is really important. But if you're thinking about what's going to be a generically good return on investment, if you're looking at this as an investment opportunity, I would look at properties with good 2-car garages, not all of us can do what Derek can do in terms of building ADUs at such low cost, high quality. So most of us are dealing with, working with other general contractors. And then you're looking for a good basement or good internal conversion potential, or a good 2-car garage conversion potential, because those are going to have the best return on investment. Those are going to cost half the cost of the construction. You're going to be able to rent those out for essentially what a new construction unit would cost. So if you're looking at it from an investment standpoint, I would look for both. I would look for both a basement that has 8-foot ceilings ideally, and also a 2-car garage, depending on the jurisdictional codes for ADUs.
Good. That's good stuff. That kind of spurred me to get off my soapbox. And the other thing I would add, I'm always thinking standalone detached, because that's the strategy I've gone to pretty much exclusively. But I will say, for first-time home buyers and people on a budget, by far, every time, hands down, the easiest one is going to be to look for a house that has a master bedroom that's semi-isolated from the rest of the house. Ideally, it's not going to share a wall with another bedroom. You can wall it off, put in a single one-wall kitchen, and have an attached ADU for cheaper than any other ADU you can build. And that's because the bathroom, the most expensive part, running that sewer line on grade to the lateral, is already done. If you have a master bedroom that has a bath, running water, running power, and putting a single one-wall kitchen in a studio style or one-bedroom style master bedroom conversion is always going to be the biggest bang for your buck. So I forgot.
And how much did that ADU you just showed me that you built cost, Derek? Like your all-in cost for the attached internal conversion ADU?
It was under 30K. I did one recently for under 30K, and had I not pulled permits and went for a legacy ADU, it would have been closer to 20. And I forget that strategy sometimes just because of the stuff I'm doing, but just for clarity there, SS, depending on your budget, and easeability and feasibility, look for the internal conversion, or what Cole in his book would call a carve out. Christopher, good to talk to you again here. He said, interesting, Charlotte, North Carolina has all these and champion the small changes as improvements. Guess I should be looking into Durham over here. I know North Carolina is a great market. I'll say something as an investor. I was at an event recently, and Pace Morby, for those of you that follow him, he's an amazing man. There's a reason why everybody loves him. I spent maybe 15 minutes one-on-one talking with him, and great guy. But he was asked on stage, what's the one market you would invest in if it was the only place you could buy? And he said Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina areas. So that's a great question. Cole, do you have some input on
Well,
there?
I alluded to the fact that Durham is the only jurisdiction on the entire Eastern Seaboard, as far as I know, that actually passes muster as having what I would call good ADU codes. Charlotte would not, because there's a lot of nuances, a lot of details in there. But I haven't looked at every single city, obviously, in the East Coast, but as far as I know, Durham is the only city that actually does pass the test. It just doesn't do a good job of publishing the fact that it has good ADU codes. Anyway,
that's the kind of market you look for as an investor. Like, where's a sleeper market that has good ADU code? Another thing we didn't mention that should be brought up on where do I build an ADU, depending on your goals. And if you're going to try to burr your money out or refinance your money back out or sell, ideally you'd like to look at a market that has some data that would comp your ADUs. So that's another thing to look at. If you're going to borrow from your 401k and build an ADU, and you want to do a cash out refi on that build that you did, it would be nice to be in an area that has comparable sales based on that appraisal approach if you need to get your money back out. Cole and I were talking about this earlier, but some places, he brought up, how do you know a good ADU builder when you're in an area that doesn't have ADU code until just now, and there's nobody that's ever built one? Well, same rules apply. Somebody that's built homes in that area that has relationships with the people that are going to be giving you the final certificate of occupancy, really. But the appraisal piece, that's another quick tip I give people all the time, is how much is my ADU going to be worth when I'm done, Derek? I just tell them, find a reputable appraiser in your area and pay them. Don't say, hey, what is your opinion of value? Say, hey, what would it charge? What would you charge to give me an opinion of value of this plan set on this property? And that's probably the closest you're going to get to the after build appraised value in that market. So that's a quick, people think, oh, I don't want to spend $300 or $400 to get somebody's opinion. Well, if you build a $250,000 ADU thinking you're going to get $175,000 of value, and it comes in at $90K, that $300 or $400 all of a sudden becomes a lot more valuable. Let's see here. Amin says, you guys are the A team. Thank you. Yeah, I thought this would be cool to get Cole over here answer questions. So thank you for that. Gene again. Okay, it says if space available, what is your opinion of garage versus no garage? Go ahead, Cole.
I'm not sure what the question is exactly. Can you build, like, if you can build an ADU above a garage or just an ADU? Is that the question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe clarify it.
Yeah.
Maybe you meant to say doing a garage conversion versus doing an ADU somewhere else besides the garage.
But let's speculate on a couple of the different questions that you might be posing. So one is, garages do have value for people. So if you are removing your garage and replacing it with an ADU, you're removing some value from your property, and you're going to be doubling up the number of households on that property, and you are going to probably need some additional space for garbage cans, lawnmowers, suitcases, canoes, bikes, all these things. So you're going to have to account for that. So that's one answer to your question, depending on what your question is. Another answer to your question is garage or no garage. If you're looking for an inexpensive ADU, yes, definitely consider buying a property that has a garage, but that garage has to meet certain conditions, such as the foundation should not be slumping, the roof should be in decent shape, the siding should be in decent shape. You don't want mold, rot, mildew, termite damage. Of course, all these things can be repaired, but basically, like, what you want is a good structural shell and a foundation that's in good shape. If you're looking for a garage conversion, and if your question is about, is an ADU above a garage better than an ADU without a garage, that's just a personal choice. It's oftentimes like a code thing. Like if you're required to have off-street parking on your property, you might want to do an ADU above a garage to retain your off-street parking. Or if you have the money to do it, maybe an ADU above a garage makes sense, but that's going to add $50,000 of cost to your overall project, and people don't have an extra $50,000 to spend when they're building an ADU. So, prioritize the ADU, obviously. So depending on your question, those are some thoughts.
I'll chime in on my opinions of garage conversions. They're probably my least favorite ADU type. In fact, I purchased a property a couple of years ago just to do an ADU garage conversion and document the whole thing and share it with everybody. What do you know? It turned out to be the most popular video I ever made. I actually had a good time, and it changed my jaded opinion on garage conversions. But a few of the things I don't like is I don't get to design the space. Unless I tear the ceiling off, I don't get my signature vaulted ceiling, which in my opinion is the biggest and best bang for your buck in a small space, is add volume with a vaulted ceiling. So you don't really get to do that easily. You've got floor height issues. Most garages weren't poured on a vapor barrier, so you're always going to have some sort of moisture issue, even if you put the barrier on the interior conditioned space, say like under an LVP. And then most garage conversions that people call me on, or that people look at that they want to convert, are older. They're 1970s or older, and therefore they're probably built on a slab. They're not seismic. They're not whatever the local requirement is, lower than the freeze line. And a lot of times the building is in total disarray. So even on this new garage that I built that was fully permitted in 1996, I still had to tear out, and it was finished. It was a finished garage with drywall and insulation. I still had to tear out the whole bottom half of the whole place to run water, sewer, power. We still had to basically cut out with concrete saws large portions of the interior slab to run plumbing. So you almost have to undo it to redo it. And that's with a new permitted style garage. So if you have a garage conversion that you can get permits from, say there's archives at the city, they actually have blueprints, and yes, there were permits pulled for that. It's going to be easier, but most garages are 40s and 50s, and people say, hey, I want to do a garage conversion, or even worse, I want a garage over ADU, and it's built on a 4-inch slab, it's falling down, and it's going to be way easier almost every time to just tear it down and start over, with the exception of if it's a legal existing use because it's already closer to the lot line. And if you tore it down, you wouldn't get that grandfathered setback. The only other thing I would add is every new construction house that I'm looking at or building, we do give an ADU above garage. If you're building a garage for new construction, there's almost no reason not to do an ADU above it if you can. That's my take on the garages. So good question there. Thank you so much. Let's see here. We've got RJ Cook says ADUs outside UGB in Metro Portland area. Go ahead, Cole.
So you cannot build ADUs outside the urban growth boundary in the Portland metro area. for better or worse. But if it is in an urbanized area in the Portland metro area, Washington County, Multnomah County, or Clackamas County, then you can build it. If those there's certain codes under Senate Bill 1051 that stipulate the size of the unincorporated or urbanized portions of counties that cross the threshold where they have to allow ADUs, and it's like I think it's 15,000 people. So if all the Portland metro counties, if you're in an urbanized area, they must allow ADUs, but if you're in a non-urbanized area, they do not have to allow ADUs. But I should say that there was a recent state law that just passed called Senate Bill 391 in Oregon, and that allows for jurisdictions to allow for the development of rural ADUs. So it's possible that in your county they might allow for that, like Lane County outside of Eugene just did. But there's a lot of it's a pretty restrictive set of ADU ordinances. I wouldn't bank on that. If I was in your circumstance, I would, and what I tell most people who are in areas that they can't build ADUs by right permanent, I just build a detached bedroom, because you can do that. You can have everything except for the kitchen sink and stove.
Yeah, good point. I would say the same thing. The detached living space. The only thing I see people running up against outside of urban growth boundary areas is septic requirements. So that's another thing. If you're looking at a rural property, this is much harder. I mean, infill housing in the rural, even within the UGB, is usually going to be harder. I'm always looking for properties that are plug and play. What I would call plug and play is there's city water, city power. It's going to be a lot less headache in an area that allows ADUs. So even if you can't build an ADU and you're like, I'm going to build a detached living space out in the county here, check with your local authority having jurisdiction that controls sewer septic permitting, and make sure that you can add another bedroom. Septic in most every area that I've ever studied has to do with bedroom, not drain fixture units or people or toilets like you might think. It's all based on bedrooms. So don't get caught with that one. Great question, though. Thank you, RJ. SS says, any thoughts on ADU design for the retired elderly? Oh, I'm like, I know you built an
let me go first.
Yeah.
So my rule of thumb is like the visitability is the standard that Portland just came up with, and the best way to think about this is, can you get from the street into the shower without going up over a single step? Like, can you roll into it? If you can do that, it's visitable, and there's not like that much more you need to really worry about. There's a lot of other like little nuances, such as putting blocking in the shower and making counters certain heights. But really, like, if you can roll into the shower, it's visitable and it's going to be useful for a whole range of people, whether you are a person with a walker or a baby carriage, or you like to bike, or you have a luggage. So if you can build visitable units, absolutely, it's great. I have one. And it was like it kind of changed. It is casual living to be able to like roll into your shower from the street. It is like, it's a really nice lifestyle to not have to walk up any steps. I don't live in one anymore, but I should also say, it doesn't cost anything extra. It just takes a little bit of forethought if you have the right kind of unit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, great stuff. I've been in his visitable ADU in Portland, so I can attest to what he said to be true. I will also say that recently I finished a project. I had a couple of amazing, highly qualified, sweet tenants, potential tenants, come look at a place, and just per happenstance, they were both, one was 78 and one I think was 80. Different people from this a couple different areas. Anyways, they couldn't access the ADU easily because there was one step into the house. And even though I had two bathrooms, one was a tub, the other was a step-in shower. It literally has a 4.5-inch step-in curb, and that was too much for the accessibility of both of these elderly people. And it almost like just broke my heart that I've never thought more about my design. Like Cole said, a little bit more planning and design up front. It's not a whole lot more money to build that way. And what I ended up finding out through my own research and just the own stew in my head was that anybody could live in a unit that was accessible or that was built to age in place design, and not anybody can live in an ADU above a garage. So why would I not build a unit that's more available to more people? So it's actually changed the idea of how I think. The biggest problem I'm seeing right now, because I'm developing a property soon and I'm in planning right now, is the grade change based on a crawl space foundation or a slab on grade. Due to our high water table and the expansive soils in our area, we don't build a lot of slab on grade here. Pretty much the industry standard is the footing with the crawl space and a stem wall. And it's a lot harder to get your grade differences right, especially if you're on any kind of a slope. So one thing I'm looking at is how to perfect the slab on grade build so I can build these age in place designs better. But that's a really, really good question. And the age in place design, the roll in shower, the grab bars, the minimum turning radius in a bathroom is kind of hard to meet. The audible, visible alarms. There's some different things if you wanted to go ADA, but just the fact of being more accessible, I think, is a no-brainer, and I'm embarrassed that I haven't built better to help more people in that way. And here we got Westlake Dream Gates. I'm in the early stages of building a detached ADU for 749 square feet in Southern Cal, Ventura County. The current plan is a 2-bed, 2-bath. In both of your experiences, I'll say, keep 2-bath or make living room bigger? Go ahead, Cole.
That's a great question. I would probably defer to Derek on this, but I'll just say, bathrooms are going to be expensive. Add on $20,000 to the cost, but obviously there's value there. I would keep the bedrooms on the smallish side and add more living space, and probably not do the extra bathroom, I guess. But it's site situation dependent. I don't have too much good generic advice for you, Derek.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we just finished an ADU, the biggest ADU that I've ever built, and the only ADU I've ever built that had 2 bathrooms. And I didn't really love the idea until I saw potential tenants coming in and touring the place. And then actually the tenants that ended up leasing the place, and everybody loved it. It was ideal to have 2 bathrooms. And it's kind of funny. If you watch my ADU build series, which some of you guys have, you've seen that unit. It's the one that we give away. We gave to our city. It's pre-approved. You can download it under the resources tab of thataduguy.com. But I can almost touch the doors of each of the bathrooms. I mean, they're 6.5 feet apart, but one of them is accessed through what I would call the master, and the other one is kind of community in the hall. And what it ended up working as is this 2-bedroom, 2-bath ADU could live really well with 2 different people. So the roommate scenario, nobody wants to share a bathroom. It's not that much more money. I figured it's about $3,500 more to have that second bathroom. And what I did was I just reduced the sizes of the bathroom. They don't have to be big. If you have a roommate that wants their own bathroom, it doesn't have to be 8 by 12. It can be 5 by 8.5, and they're stoked that it's theirs. They've got a 30-inch vanity, a toilet, and a 32-inch tub shower combo, or a 32-inch step-in shower. The other thing we did, which I'll piggyback on what Cole said, is we reduced the bedrooms a little bit. In a small space, the complaints I have most often are people build too big of bedrooms or too big of bathrooms in a small ADU. So by reducing the bedroom to what I would call the minimum, which is 10 by 10 with a 24-inch deep closet, and keeping our bathrooms 5 foot by 8.5 or 5 foot by 10, we can gain that 30 or 40 square feet that most people think that they're losing by shrinking one room to get a second bathroom. So it was the first time we did 2 bathrooms. I wasn't so sure. I didn't love the idea until it was done. I don't think I'll ever build another ADU above 750-ish square feet without a second bathroom. I say do it.
But you hit on something important, which is like the target audience in that instance was like 2 individuals. So like that weren't a couple. So if it's going to be for like an individual or a couple, probably 1 bathroom is adequate. But if it's for like 2 individuals who each want their own bathroom, then that's I can see why that would be preferable. Anyway, maybe that's just a consideration to put out there. Like, who do you want to rent to, and what right?
Yeah. I think that's all good. What everybody that I ever consult with, what are your goals on this ADU build, and who's your end user? So if your goals are you're going to live in it or mom's going to live in it, yeah, we're going to do ADA or we're going to do age in place. If it's like to get, you're in a college town and you want to rent it to, a co-living situation, the more bedrooms, the more bathrooms, things like that. What's the goal and what's the end user? Where can we download your recent ADU plans? So I've got 2 sets of plans for free that I give away. They're on the resources tab of thataduguy.com. And I think Cole has access to some free plans. Do you still link to those?
I have plans on pdxadu.blogspot.com for my original ADU. There's lots of places we can download free plans now from government websites too. So you can go to like San Diego or probably about 10 different jurisdictions in California and download generic like ADU plans if you want.
The one advantage I would say about downloading a set of my free plans is there's 7.5 hours of good video content of me building them step by step, which to me as a visual learner would be helpful.
Yeah.
Let's see, how to ADU. There's Ryan. He says, thanks a lot. That's a lot of ADU talent on one screen, and you can even hear us. Thanks, Ryan. Again, shout out to Ryan, how to ADU. If you don't follow him, especially if you're in California, you're missing out. Do you want to say anything about Ryan?
Ryan's the man in California for good regulatory insights and good tips and tricks on utilizing California's code. Ryan's also helping to organize the East Bay ADU tour following ADU Academy on October 21st in Berkeley, California. So certainly consider coming to that event, or if you're a practitioner, come to ADU Academy the day before, and then you get a complimentary pass to that ADU tour.
Last ADU tour that I was at was up in Portland, and one that Cole put on, and me and Ryan and Florentine from Sidekick Homes and a couple other ADU advocates drove around all day in the minivan and just had a blast. So like I said, Ryan's a great guy. Gene, thank you. That was very helpful. I guess I assume we hit your garage questions and we assumed right. So thank you, Gene Carpenter, for your participation tonight. Again, if you're still listening, there's still over 2,000 people on here, or 21 people, excuse me. Please leave a comment. We're here to help you. Like, how can we help you build needed infill housing and make some money at the same time? If only I could find a efficient contractor in Portland and Seattle. I do have a product that I share with, I have an affiliate partnership with a company that helps you get 3 bids from 3 licensed contractors in your market within 2 weeks. If you're interested in that, send me an email. My email is on my website, thataduguy.com, and I can hook you up with that link. They don't actually build it. They're a fintech company called Realm that helps you get those quotes, and it's a good deal. I think it's about $500 for the deposit. If you use my link, you save $100. And if you go with one of those 3 builders, they actually refund your deposit. It's the only person that or company that I've partnered with and supported because their project is legit. I mean, I couldn't get 3 contractors to give me 3 bids in 2 weeks in my own market. My friends won't even call me back. So pretty cool thing. Tony is saying, when designing a 1-1 ADU, do you recommend to have an ensuite bathroom in the master? No, never. I've never put the bedroom. If it's a 1-1, I don't want the guests to have to walk through the bedroom to use the bathroom. But again, what are your goals? If it's for mom and she's going to live there and she needs to be really close because of mobility issues, yes, maybe. But if I'm designing it based on my goals as an investor to drive yield and give a good product, I would never do that. Go ahead, Cole.
Nothing to add.
Let's see. I'm in. Cole. Are some of the SDCs still waived in Portland?
Yeah, STCs are waived, as far as we know, indefinitely for ADUs. That is to say, they do not charge impact fees, which are one-time fees that you would pay to offset the infrastructural burden you're adding to the sewer, water, parks, and transportation systems, which would amount to roughly $19,000 to $24,000 when you're building an ADU. but you have to sign a 10-year deed restriction that says, I will not rent out any portion of my property, the primary house or the ADU, as a short-term rental that is a 30-day rental or less, like an Airbnb, for a period of 10 years, after which point you can do that if you wish.
Good take. The city of Medford, Oregon, which is a neighboring market, adopted almost that code verbatim. And they had two different funding sources for 50% of each. One of them has run out, so they're still waiving 50% of those fees in the Medford market to some of my friends. Let's see, we've got some more questions. Keep them coming. Like I said, we'll stay as long as they come. If there's no questions, we'll wrap it up. Let's see, DIY Tacoma. Hey, dude. So one thing I will say real quick is I recognize a lot of you guys, and I still, just like Cole, we answer all of our own emails and all of our own messages and DMs, and it's really cool to see people that comment on our videos and stuff from time to time. So totally recognize you. Thanks for the support. I appreciate you. It says ADU guy, keep the videos coming. Always something new. We hope to build this coming year. Salem, Oregon has waived city SDCs till June 24. Sounds like you need to get your plans in by June 24.
Yeah.
And always great to hear from you, dude.
I didn't know about that, about Tim. That's great.
So SS, how would one go about finding local codes for a detached ADU? I'm assuming wanting to learn how to ID already developed small properties to buy that will allow building an ADU. Okay, you want to start with that one and then I'll chime in?
Yeah, good for it.
Okay, I would just say build a relationship with your local and planning and zoning and building department. So if you're looking at said city, I would call said city and say, hey, in what areas of your zoning map here do you guys allow ADUs? Where do you guys like to see ADUs? And I would go shopping in those areas. I would also, here's a quick tip that I've come to learn in our area is a good strategy is looking, if you're looking on the market for these properties, look for properties that realtors are advertising, marketing, pricing as a house with ADU that's not permitted. And by becoming an expert in your local zoning code, you can call on that listing, call a local planning and zoning office and say, is there a certificate occupancy for this detached or attached building? And if there's not, you can go back to the seller and negotiate heavily for a price reduction, because what they're selling and what they're advertising are two different things. And by buying that little bit of risk, by buying that unpermitted, usually legal existing unpermitted use, if you know you can get it permitted, there's a ton of upside there if you can get a price reduction. So I'm actually targeting houses in markets where ADUs are allowed that have illegal ADUs. And I have a little system of calling and asking for a special inspection. I know I can do this because I'm an expert in my local zoning code. I ask for a special inspection. I walk through the property with the building official, write down everything that needs to be changed to get that up to code and what it's going to take to get a certificate of occupancy. And I have an unfair advantage. And you can do that too by just following those basic rules. This one's for Cole. Do you work in Clark County, Washington? What's it like working with you?
It's terrible. Don't work with me. Yeah. So I do just a one-time consultation, and I do work in Clark County, Washington. Really Vancouver. I'm not going to go to like rural parts of Clark County, but if you're in Vancouver, yeah, you can just reach out on accessorydwellingstrategies.com. There's information about my consultations there, and it's just a one-time like site visit thing. That's all.
Min says, would it be a good idea to build a detached ADU with a basement? Also convert the basement to another ADU?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a couple ADUs with basements. I think it's a fine idea. It's just really expensive. Like in the Portland market, it's going to add $50,000 to $75,000 of cost, and people don't have that kind of money. When you're building an ADU, you're going to be completely financially strapped, most likely. So are you going to be able to afford another 50 to 75? Probably not. That's why people aren't doing it. If you have the money to do it, sure. And if you want to convert it to a future ADU, yes, you can do it. You can do a stacked ADU. You can do that by right, at least in Portland. You can do a stacked ADU. It doesn't even have to be a basement ADU. You could do a first floor, ground level, non-habitable shed space and put an ADU above it. Essentially, an ADU above a garage. You could then retroactively convert that garage to an ADU in the future when you have the money to do it, or you could build stacked ADU above grade, as long as the midpoint of the gable is less than 20 feet, you can do that by right. There's no reason to go subterranean. It's going to add a lot of cost. And it's not a nicer space to live in, so I don't know why you would do that. But yes, you can do that theoretically. It's very rarely done though.
Yeah, I would just chime in and say, basements are tough. Again, in my market that I'm familiar with, high water table, expansive soils, we don't really do them. They also traditionally aren't built here. It's just like, what did the contractor's grandpa teach him? It wasn't basement construction. We don't really have them in our valley. I would also add that egress windows and egress bays are hard. It's a more dank living situation, like Cole touched on. It's just not better living conditions. If I could build 2 stories under the height restriction, I'd prefer to have both of those stories built above ground for obvious reasons of airflow, moisture, daylight, egress, things like that. The one exception to that rule is for slope side building. If you can cut into an area and you have a good waterproofing and good drainage system, those work awesome. And some of our hillsides here, we have what I would call a daylight basement, where the back half of the high grade area is actually underground, and then the sides on a slope and the front is fully exposed. But that's a great question. The cool thing is, just like with personal finance, building is very personal too. You can build really whatever you can dream up, get passed by your city and can afford. Let's see, Kamar, can one of you consult with me to build an ADU in South Carolina? First off, thanks for tuning in from South Carolina. Heck yeah. Go ahead, Cole. Do you do consultations in South Carolina?
I would refer people to my book, like as a starting place. And then I have an online course. There's not a lot of ADU activity in South Carolina, at least not a lot of permitted ADU activity, other than perhaps in like Charleston. Some legacy ADUs, but there's not a lot of
those are called carriage houses, right? Where they put the horses, like
yep.
Literally.
Yeah. So there's a lot of legacy, like older stuff. Anyway, bottom line is, yeah, but I don't really do it too much, Derek.
Yeah, I do consultations all over the country, and I'm not here to sell anything. In fact, like the consultation piece of my business is my least favorite thing that I do, because it's trading time for money. And when somebody schedules something for me, I'm like, oh crap, it feels like work. With that being said, I still love to do it. I do 15-minute consultations or 1-hour consultations, either over the phone or on Zoom. The most value I usually add to people is when you're in the early planning stages with conceptual drawings or ideas. I can help you design to save money. My whole value here is I would probably just tell you to go watch all my YouTube videos. If you have more time than money, don't pay me. Go watch all the content, because every question people have paid me for is on my YouTube channel for free. If you do need my time one-on-one, I'll give it to you. And I would tell you to become an expert in your local zoning code, figure out what you can do, come up with a cost-effective design, probably with some kind of rectangular build and a one-wall kitchen. And then I would teach you how to find a contractor or how to hire subs if you're going to self-manage. But it's all around saving you money. And although it's a few $100s an hour, I always tell people, pay me hundreds to save thousands. But always start with the free content first. Always start there. But if you are interested, you can check my stuff out on my YouTube channel or thataduguy.com, or go to That ADU Guy on Google, and I've got over 70 5-star reviews. You can see what other people are saying and then go from there.
I'll just say that, Kamar, most likely your codes aren't very good in South Carolina. So just big red flag there, that you should kind of assess how good your codes are first before you consider building an ADU. And the codes are most likely going to require you to have off-street parking and owner occupy the property and go through a conditional use process and all this other junk that makes it undesirable to build one there. So just be aware of that.
And that's also when our strategies really will help you. Like, hey, we'll help you build an ADU that's not an ADU, which is one of the major calls I know we're both getting these days, is how do we get around the rules and build something very similar. DIY Tacoma, my man, he says, your thoughts, have either of you purchased manufactured homes and used it as an ADU, or is this not allowed? I've got some good info.
Yeah, so we did a webinar on this, which you can watch on aduspecialist.org. There's a whole hour-long webinar done by a HUD manufacturer home developer based in San Diego, California, which talks about using HUD manufactured homes as ADUs, which you can do by right in Oregon, California, and Washington. So yes, you can do it. I haven't personally done it, but yeah, I think it's a great idea in terms of getting low cost, relatively simple ADUs detached done on your property. Definitely something to look into. I wouldn't claim to be an expert in it though.
I would say no. I haven't purchased a manufactured home. There's some things about them that I don't love. The depreciation is less. The loan percentage is higher, down payment, higher rate because of that. But I do like the housing product type. I do like that they're federally stamped by HUD and they can supersede all local jurisdictions. I do like that our legislator in the state of Oregon has deemed them the same as any other residential single family house, with the exception of some historic districts. Cities can still use some design standards against them, but I think it's a great option for an offsite build. And I still can't believe and wrap my brain around all these tech companies that are going into the manufactured of modular ADU buildings when we've had this product for years. It's called a manufactured home. Like, I would not want to go compete with Berkshire Hathaway's Clayton Homes to go build something similar that doesn't have that HUD stamp. Another thing I would say is if you're using this strategy in California, those are exempt from the solar requirement. So that's another, I mean, that could be a big cost savings. I haven't used one. I will tell you that for the first time ever, I've thought about it seriously. Quick shout out to Wolf Industries. There's a company, they don't create a full-fledged manufactured home, but it's very similar. And where you would set up a perimeter foundation, and then you would bring these things in, whether it's a HUD stamped manufactured home or some other modular offsite built, and set it down. And I've looked at them for a cottage cluster, and I've also looked at the manufactured home design as how do you build a small miniature manufactured home park without getting into the manufactured park code and zoning requirement. And you can do that today with some of our cluster ordinances. So just a quick tip there. If you ever wanted to circumvent the rules to do a manufactured home park and you live in a state where they're deemed the same as residential housing, you can do that. Just be ready for the neighbors to come after you with pitchforks. Don't ask me how I know that. I've decided a detached garage that I can use to build a mother-in-law suite ADU. That said, I would much rather build an ADU from the ground up and save my garage for cars. What's the cost difference?
I have a simple way of putting this, which is like that detached garage, if it's in good shape, if you can actually convert it, that is to say, if it adheres to the zoning requirements and it's in good structural shape, it'll cost like half that, half the cost of building a new construction ADU. So if you have the space and you have, the full money to do a detached ADU, it's probably, a good idea to keep that garage so you can retain it. But if you are looking to save money, absolutely consider the garage conversion.
I would agree. Yeah, it's half the price. One thing that people underestimate, Cole touched on earlier, is we like a lot of stuff, and usually people put a lot of their stuff that they don't want to get rid of in a garage. So if you have a 2-car garage that's 400 square feet that you're going to convert in a house into some type of housing unit, I would probably bet you've got about 400 square feet worth of stuff you're going to have to find somewhere else to put. So keep that in mind. But yeah, about half the price. What do you think about a 2-car garage ADU, but have a nice 2-door garage door for exterior aesthetics? Even possible. I would talk to the building official. I know personally, I have seen people leave their garage doors to make it look still like a garage, even though they're following ADU code. A lot of codes say that your entry has to be in a different side of the house off the front. Personally, I would pull the garage doors. I don't want my ADU to look like a garage.
I don't think you can generally get, without spending like $10,000, you cannot get garage doors that meet the residential energy code generally because of that lack of air sealing in the seals and the roll of garage door. So you can see that in commercial environments, but I've very rarely seen it done in residential and ADUs because of the cost involved in getting those like code compliant roll top garage doors.
Oh, that's funny. I read that as like, my mind went to, we're going to wall that off and leave the doors for exterior aesthetics. I didn't even think about using them still. 2 brains are better than one. But I'll tell you, the last garage conversion I did, it had a nice insulated metal aluminum garage door, and I put it on Craigslist for free, and I had 1 million people calling to come get this thing, and somebody came and actually took it down and hauled it off for free. So that was
I did
kind of
that too.
don't think that just because you have like a really nice door, you can't take it down and add value to somebody else. Thanks for the question. So bread night, thank you. Amin says, what can we do to support you both besides watching your videos? Your content is to value, not to reciprocate. I can speak for myself. I don't need anything. I love helping people. I love being able to add some value. Like we said earlier, we both touched on it, but I live off of the income from ADUs that I've planned, designed, built, and kept. So just views are nice. You know, there's way more people on here than there are thumbs up. Those are always cool for me. Follow me on Instagram. I'm probably most active there. Like and interact with my YouTube content. Share it with your friends if you think it'll help them. But that's the value. The currency I'm really working in at this phase in my investing career is like, how many more people can I help? I live a simple life. I don't need any monetary contributions. But the fact that you've asked that, only 2 other people, 1 or 2 other people ever have asked me that. So thank you. That goes a long way. What about you, Cole?
Same, ditto.
You could buy his book.
Buy my book. Yeah, that'll be useful to you and to other people if you buy the book and share it with other people who are interested in building a video.
That was really sweet. Thank you again, like from the bottom of my heart. That was really cool. Okay, Robert Perkins. What are you guys seeing for price linear foot for trenching /hookups for a straightforward tie-in panel upgrade hookups? Thanks, guys. Glad to see you kick this housing crisis in the teeth. Bam. So I'll speak to this after Cole. Cole's got talk about your business, Tiny Hookups in Portland.
So Portland allows for RVs to be used as housing. This is above and beyond your ADU entitlement. You can also have an RV, also a DIY RV, also known as a tiny house on wheels. Doesn't have to meet any certifications or standards. You can have that on your property. So I started a business with my colleague serving as a general contractor, putting in water, sewer, and electrical infrastructural hookups for that. And so, I'd say like the trenching cost is one part of that cost. That can be, maybe depending on your site, something you can do yourself might cost as much as $5,000. Depending on the trench you have to do. Plumbing might cost $3,000 for the sewer, $3,000 for a dedicated water hookup to the RV, for a hose bib that we're putting in. But this is a kind of a specialized application. You're probably talking about putting in infrastructure for an ADU. And maybe I'll let Derek kind of handle how to think about utility costs for doing the trenching, water, sewer, and electrical for an ADU, because I have my way of explaining it, but Derek builds these. So what do you have to say?
Yeah, so the actual like linear foot price for trenching, $30 to $40 outside of the right of way, and that's up to like a 30-inch trench in standard native soil. I always suggest that you follow local jurisdiction protocol for pipe protection zones. You're going to have to over excavate. You're going to have to compact 3/4 minus or decompose granite or sand, and then you're going to have to backfill, create a pipe protection zone. You're going to want to compact in the 8-inch lifts. Haul off all your native soil. So to do it right, it's going to be expensive. I will also say that the upgrade for a panel, if you have an old 100 amp banjo panel and you need to put in a new 200 amp 2-banger panel, you're looking at anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. A lot of times it's in relation to something else, like, hey, we're overhead, let's go underground. Or we're going to upgrade the transformer because it doesn't have enough juice. You may be liable for part of that increase as well. So these are prices that I will quote that only go up from. So $3,000 to $5,000 and higher. Trenching, $30 to $40 a foot. Here's a good rule of thumb that we use if you're having to dig down in the right of way to, say, a sewer line. It's about $1,000 a vertical foot to get down to something. So if you have to tie in your sewer line out in the right of way on the other side of the sidewalk and it's 8 feet down, you're looking at $8,000 roughly just to get down there and tie in, plus the trenching fee. But it all depends on depth, type of soil. But I would say on average, the tie-ins, if you can do it, if you can tie in water, sewer, power into your existing property, budget about $10,000. If you're going to tie in out in the right of way, sewer is going to be on average $10,000 to $15,000. Putting in a new water meter and trenching that to your house could be, $5,000, where it might only be $500 if you could just tee into the 1-inch PVC. So it really is, where are you trenching from? Private property, shallow work, 36 inches and less is affordable, hundreds of dollars a crack. Right of way work, 3 feet or deeper is thousands of dollars. So just think about it like that. At 5x the cost in the right of way as you would have on private property. But that's a really good question. I would contact a professional. I'm all about relationships. So I would find somebody who's been excavating in your market for 10 or 20 or 30 years. Find the oldest, crustiest guy you can. Maybe go to the supply house, go to the local waterworks warehouse and say, hey, who's a reputable excavator that could give me some good advice? Always go to the specialist. Always, 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 always go to the specialist. Let's see here. We have RJ again. He says, any ideas about ADU regulations on historically registered sites in Oregon? Heard there might be some recent opinions for old farms.
Don't know anything about that.
Yeah, all I can say is that everything I've ever worked on in a historic district has made me want to pull my hair out. So that's all I can say. We're at 1:25 an hour, well, approaching an hour and a half. So we've got a couple more questions we're going to bang through, and then I want to wrap this up. I don't want to bore anybody. And if I talk too long, you guys might not hop back on next week when I do another live. With a stacked, two more questions, folks. And if you leave them in here, even when we shut down, I answer every comment. You'll get your question answered, or send me an email. With a stacked ADU, would you use an interior staircase or an exterior up to the deck entrance? I love Derek's low maintenance ideas.
I would go interior. I mean, you've asked questions based in Portland so far, so I'm going to assume you're in Portland. And I think, Portland, you can do a 900 square foot footprint by right as a detached accessory structure, which allows you to do an 800 square foot interior habitable second story with an interior stairwell leading up to it. And then you can have like the fire rated door leading to that ADU entry on the second story. So you have that full 800 square feet plus that 75 feet of square footage inside the stairwell. I'd probably go with that, all things being equal. You could do exterior stair as well, but as you mentioned, it's not going to be quite as desirable, especially in the winter. You could put an awning over it. After all is said and done, you'll probably end up spending more money doing it that way. So I'd just do it interior. Derek?
Yeah, it adds about $6,000 to $8,000 to make the building 4 feet wider to get a 36-inch staircase. If money wasn't an issue, I would do an interior staircase. I've been doing exterior staircases on my ADUs above garages just because they're cheaper. It's easier to get furniture in and out of them. And it's honestly just the first design I came up with. And I'm like, I'm a creature of habit. If it works, I don't change it. So if cost isn't an issue, I would put it inside, but I choose to put mine outside for those reasons. But great question again. And then we'll wrap it with this one. DIY Tacoma. It basically just says, why aren't ADUs more prevalent? He said a huge missed opportunity for jurisdictions. It seems that ADUs are the solution to address the housing cost, housing crisis issues. You nailed it. That's why we do what we do. And we're like on a Sunday night, like geeking out about this. We agree with you.
Yeah. And jurisdiction, like planning staff are getting real legit on this. So honestly, it's just a matter of time really before that sentiment boils over to being kind of broadly adopted across every state and jurisdiction. It's just going to take time. It's happening. It's happened now in 5 out of 50 states. So, 45 more states to go before we get to a wholesale kind of good regulatory environment for ADUs. But that tide has really changed in the last, really 5 years, and it's changing quickly. So So the West Coast has kind of been leading the way, but I'm hopeful that we'll see a lot more states like Montana adopting a wholesale good ADU code, which had incredibly Byzantine ADU code last year. You could not legally rent out an ADU anywhere in the entire state of Montana if you had one. That's how bad the ADU code is. So now they have gold standard ADU codes across the whole state. And so hopefully we'll see more, good statewide legislative efforts knocking down those regulatory barriers. Or it'll have to happen across the 150,000 jurisdictions, city by city. I hope it doesn't go that way, but one way or another, I think we're seeing a lot of change underfoot on the regulatory side of things. Part of the issue is that there's a lot of NIMBYism out there. So even if planners have religion, there's still a lot of kind of obstructionism towards the idea of having more housing in my neighborhood, because that's going to cause my neighborhood to change, and I don't really want more people in my neighborhood, and I don't want more parking, more vehicles parked on my street, because I like my abundant off-street free parking. And these are kind of the cultural mentalities that are kind of serving as a obstruction to the adoption of fast regulatory overhauls. But it's happening, and we love to see that. So thanks for your comment.
Thanks again, everybody. We'll catch you next time. And thanks, Cole, for coming over to the studio while you're in town to do fun stuff in the mountains.
Absolutely.
Living that ADU life. Until next time, thank you, everybody. Cool.